Alright, peoples. Alright. ¿Dónde estamos? Alright, let me just put this out. Let me just stretch my... Alright. So... Espéranme un momento. Let me just see, get this out there using a different phone, so hopefully it's not a problem. Alright. Can. Passwords, huh? What the hell? What? All this double, triple security. And then it just freezes. Right, people. Inna alhamdulillah wa kafah. Wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulih al-Mustafa. Wa ala ibadi alladhina irtada. ومن بهداهم اهتدى وبآثار أهل المدينة اقتفى وبعد فسلام الله على القوم أهلا وسهلا بكم ومرحبا Juanying Layth bienvenidos a todos people Khushamadid and Swagatam ومرحبا. Right, once again people, what is going on? Let me just share this from here now that this dinosaur phone has decided to load. You know what it is? I have this. There's so many other the usual phone I have, the spare one. Yeah. Anyway, so the battery's dead on it, people. So just un momento, just hang on a little for this dinosaur to be able to share it. It's almost done. Got a few interesting discussions today, inshallah. Right, where is it? Here it is. So, you can do it. You can do it. I'm doing my Arnie voice here. My Arnold Schwarzenegger motivational voice. You can do it. Alright, so that's Lillahi alhamd. Finally, thank God. Yeah. Alright, so mi gente, what's going on? What's preoccupying the awesome minds of the Facebook familia? What's going on? Have you seen the discussion between Muhammad Hijab and Yasir Qadi? I haven't actually. No, somebody did send me that discussion. They said that, look, do you want to check this out? And so I said I will, but I just haven't been checking it out. You know something, I'll tell you something I actually, in a strange way, envy. No, not Yasir Qadi. What I was about to say is I envy people who have and hold down a routine, like just a consistent routine in life. The only consistency I have is just inconsistency in terms of different things, and I mean by that not just work, I mean by that lifestyle, food, supplementary intakes, I mean anything. Like I just have, honestly, I think, bloody hell, like, wow, people have it, they have it, I mean, it is monotonous and I'm sure boring as hell. Probably why I don't do it, but I sometimes kind of envy it. I think, wow, like if things were that simple, then It'd just be awesome. But it's just, I don't know. I don't know, people, I don't know. Well, salud. Alright, Clay is in the house. Ahlan wa sahlan, Clay. You're doing it, you do it. Farhan, he said, eat, sleep. Muhammad Hijab's routine is fight. No, you know, my thoughts on Muhammad Hijab and that kind of da'wah scene is that, you see, to be fair, if I'm to be fair, like if I try to be fair at this moment in time, I don't know whether my opinion will change, as it often does, right? So, but in this moment in time, my assessment of people like Muhammad Hijab is that, you know, he's very intelligent, he's articulate, can express himself, he's obviously got a passion, obviously, why else is he doing all of this? So it's ticking a lot of the boxes, and to be fair, I think, and I don't follow him too closely, you see, so this is I could be wrong here, so if I'm caught out on this, there's a, disclaimer. I think he has a level, like he has maturity of thought. Although recently I saw a clip of his where he said something about, I decide to be more angry with my opponents on purpose. So I shout at them and I kind of dominate them in the, so this is with his atheist, he's had a few recent atheist, or I think mainly atheist, maybe they were Christian as well, dialogues. And he's been quite aggressive in some of them, like he started shouting, raising his voice, speaking down at the person. And there was somebody sent me a clip of his where he's asked why, is this something you're aware of? Is this a reaction? What is this? And he said, I do this purposely because Allah says that we should be harsh against the kuffar, those who are challenging Islam. We should dominate them and be harsh. And if that's what he meant, you see, by that, I mean, I'm just trying to, maybe he didn't mean it. I'm trying to give some kind of an exit here. But if that's what he meant, that is utterly nonsensical and unacceptable. That's not true. That Allah teaches us that, for example, we can never, because he said, he uses the verse of the Quran, that you will never find those who believe in Allah and His Messenger, yuwad alladhina kafaru, that they, now he said that they are friends. Now yuwad is from the verb, the third fi'al mufa'ala, which is a reciprocal, a kind of where you have another person involved, and it's to do from the word would, about love. That you are kind of expressing this overwhelming love for them. But he said in his interview that Allah is saying you can't be friends with them unless they don't, those who challenge Islam in any way. So if an atheist is challenging the validity of Islam, then you cannot be friends with him. That verse definitely is not saying anything like that. Okay. That is not at all, because in all honesty, all people to some extent who don't believe in Islam are challenging Islam. To some extent. They may not be so vocal, but at their own level, obviously if they believed in Islam, they would be Muslim. I mean, this is given the pretext that they've heard about Islam. They would say, yeah, that's, it's like I might not be openly challenging, let's say, I may not be preoccupied with challenging Hinduism or Sikhism, but ultimately, my very lifestyle choice denies its, like, I don't agree with it, and I would challenge it at some level. So what I'm trying to say is, if you're not part of something, you're ultimately always challenging it, but maybe you're on a spectrum. So it's not true that non-Muslims in the past, in the Prophet's lifetime, who weren't declaring war against Muslims were somehow happy with Islam as well. That is not a necessary follow. So it doesn't, that doesn't follow necessarily. So we've got, there would have been very many people that would have just been like, oh, okay, we don't have animosity against Islam, but we think they may have thought it's wrong, they may have thought it's dumb, they may have thought it's stupid, but they may not have had open animosity against it. So coming back to this point, this verse of the Quran where it says that expressing a love for those people, first of all, this verse was revealed at a time when Muslims were being attacked, and the non-Muslims were forming allies and a confederation of different tribes to attack the Muslims. And you had some people who still had ties with some of those different tribes. So Allah was saying that, you won't find somebody who's in his heart a believer, and yet he's got that tribe over the Muslims, their interest best at heart. So this is what the verse of the Quran was speaking about. It's not speaking about, oh, you can't be friends with... That's stupid. Because if you can marry Christians and Jews, then of course there's going to be love. There's got to be some kind of love. Right? So the thing is, or at the very least, there's going to be a friendship, a kind of friendship. So to say that, well, no, you must only be harsh against non-Muslims, and that is utterly unacceptable. So I hope that this was maybe a kind of like a blunder, that, maybe Muhammad Hijab didn't think it through and he just said it, or he was trying to say something else and he said that. But otherwise, I do see in him some maturity of thought, and I'm hopeful that maybe in years to come, maybe not right now, because right now he's still, like, his kind of, the field he's arguing from is a very kind of Salafi-esque standpoint. And Salafis, in all honesty, cannot stand a chance in front of, like, people like atheists or things like that. They cannot stand a chance. It doesn't... The Salafi, their view of looking at things, their doctrine, it's all anthropomorphic. The whole thing, and they were never people of argumentation. So you will see even people like Muhammad Hijab, or let's say other people like that, who are of a Salafi kind of background. When it comes to arguing, they will use Ash'ari arguments, they will use Maturidi arguments, because those were the people historically in the Muslim sciences who argued for theology. The Hanbalis didn't. They were, just like a literalist, textualist people. They were very harsh, but they were never really geniuses of philosophy or theology or things like this. But yeah, so I wanted to say that. And I think it's worth noting here that, this whole thing, al-wala wal-bara lillah, this is a Salafi Wahhabi thing, right? That this thing of we love and we hate for the sake of God. This does not exist in our tradition. This is a Wahhabi invention that through mass kind of advertising and a lot of petroleum dollars behind this da'wah, they've managed to spread a lot of glossy literature throughout the world that everybody today has heard of this term, al-wala wal-bara lillah. This al-wala wal-bara is some Hanbalis, mainly Wahhabis. It's the thing that people like Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab bases his whole, I can't even really say movement, his insurgency on, where he goes around and he uses that as a justification to kill other Muslims. So, you see, this thing, if you check this up, al-wala wal-bara, it's only written by Saudi scholars and Gulf scholars and Wahhabi scholars. Nobody else spoke about this kind of thing like this. I mean, maybe if they were speaking about in a different context and you could kind of extract a word from there and give it a little... But they never spoke like, by the way, we have al-wala wal-bara lillah, we hate for the sake of Allah, we do this, we do, like as a belief construct. I'm not saying you may find certain things that weren't being said like that, but you could see these words in, like, so for example, Allah saying that He doesn't like disbelief. He doesn't like the plot of the disbelievers. He doesn't, and using words like kurah. But even then, and you'll find Allah saying in the Quran that He's bari, that the messenger is bari, there is bara'ah, that they have no association with the people who've gone against the covenant and so on. And this is what bara means in essence, like a detachment of association. It does not mean hatred, okay? But this new thing that we have, that, oh, you must love and hate for the sake of God, it's an innovation in Islam, and it is nothing but kind of Salafi stroke Wahhabi propaganda. So do not buy into things like that. So if you see things like that, okay, cool. So yes, bro, what was a question here? What would you say if a 17 Muslim girl has tattoos according to Islam? I'm not sure what the age specificity relevance factor is, but tattoos, in my understanding, I've got a detailed video on it, are not haram. Now, I'm not saying it's something that's encouraged by Islam. It's not encouraged. They're usually more cultural. So tattoos being used as a kind of fashion accessory is quite a recent phenomenon. This is probably within the last century or so, generally speaking. It's only very recent. Human beings have been using tattoos for millennia, but they usually used to use them for branding. So they would brand slaves, brand cattle. They used them for tribal affiliation. They used them for tribal kind of patterns. They used them. So they didn't generally do things like, you know, get a little butterfly on the shoulder or something like this. They didn't do things like this generally throughout history. They had tattoos, maybe like certain markings and certain things to associate yourself with an in-group versus out-group kind of mentality. I don't believe it's haram. There have been several Malikiyah who have leaned that way as well, from the school of Medina. Others do feel it's haram, but that's their perspective, their take. So Berber women, yes, Berber women still have tattoos. A lot of rural Pakistani old women have some tattoos. So when I visited, when my grandmother was still alive in the village, and she passed away over a decade ago now, probably about 14 years ago she passed away. And she passed away at the age of, I think, 92 or something, 93. So she was, quite old in that sense. And one thing about rural people, alhamdulillah, I mean, they especially who live that lifestyle, they maintain their health, relatively speaking. I mean, obviously, when somebody's 90 years old, then they're going to be kind of crunched up, but still walking, doing everything herself, visiting people in the village, talking, doing this, doing that, everything. So she was still very kind of mobile. And my grandfather, he passed away as well. He was of a similar kind of age. He passed away with just a 6-month difference. So he passed away first, and she passed away 6 months after him. And may Allah grant them an elevated maqam in Jannah. Now, but with her, I remember she had some small dots by the chin that were kind of like tattoo marks. So you could see like some small dots. It wasn't nothing like I mean, I don't assume it was like a beauty accessory, because it was like a certain kind of, I can't recall them correctly now, but I remember there were kind of dots down here, like they were at that time kind of greenish because the ink had kind of gone green. And I noticed a lot of the elder women had them. So the women who were very old, A lot of them had them. They had them in their hands as well over here. They had like kind of dots and things like this. And so, you see, I think this is the thing, that Islam really has just been natural. You see, to these people, Islam was natural to them. Like, they understood what salah is. They understood, they had ethics, a sense of ethics. And they understood that the main thing is getting through this life and surviving and, you know, and trying to be a decent human being. And that's what these people did. And I feel that in many ways, they, without even understanding the intricacies of Islam, they had kind of grasped it still by its very roots. Somebody said his gran has the same on her forearm. Exactly. So you'll see elderly people have this. And it's interesting that, you see, now there seems to be this new branding of Islam in the Indian subcontinent. And I personally don't like it, if I'm going to be honest. But I mean, who cares what I like or don't like? But there seems to be this new kind of this Arabization of the Indo-pak Muslims. You see, people, you have to understand something. A few centuries ago, only a few centuries ago, India's overall economy was, it kind of rivaled something like an entire third of the globe. They were so wealthy. Now this is important because money always plays a significant role. Not only did they have a huge economy, when you look at Muslim numbers, so if we take, I mean, we could take the numbers today, I mean, you can read up the numbers historically. Muslims in just the Indian subcontinent, right, they themselves outnumber, they almost probably double almost the entire Muslims of all Arab nation states. Now that is something to just think about. That just in the Indian subcontinent, the Muslims there, the entire, 30 countries, Arab countries, the Indian Muslims are probably double that number in population. Now why is that? Why am I saying that? You see, I'm saying that because the Indian Muslim, and by the Indian Muslim, I mean the Indo-pak Muslim, today including Pakistan and let's say Bangladesh, and maybe Sri Lanka, and that whole kind of Indian subcontinent. These Muslims historically kind of saw themselves as slightly distinct. They were where they were. They never considered themselves to be a part of the Abbasids or the Umayyads or the Ottomans in that case. And this is all propaganda, by the way, that, you know, people say that the Mughals used to rape the Ottomans. I really doubt it. That people like, you know, Jalaluddin Akbar and these people they couldn't care less about the Ottomans. Maybe at certain times there would have obviously been diplomacy, you know, like you say something kind to somebody else. That always happens. But in the real world, they wouldn't care. They were self-sufficient. They weren't just self-sufficient. They were like a very incredibly wealthy empire. So, yeah, and the purpose of me saying this, I want to come back to this caliphate point as well, but the purpose of me saying this is there was a culture that people saw as natural. That Islam, because Islam's been in the Indian subcontinent for arguably from the 1st century in some parts of it, you know, of the Prophet. So from that time, we're talking about under the, you know, the instructions of Hajjaj, you've got Muhammad ibn Qasim, who reaches Sindh. So the point is that these people have a culture which was a very naturalistic kind of, like, it was a very in sync, in harmony with the other cultures around it. But now there seems to be this push for like clear kind of us versus them, separate to look, Muslims obviously religiously they're separate from Hindus, but they are still in essence the same people. But now there's this push to say that no, they are, we were never the same people to begin with. It's not that our forefathers were Hindus who converted to Islam. We were never you guys in the first place. And this is obviously, it breeds the kind of fascism that we have today, like in the rise in the far right in India. So yeah, and recently there's all this push to get rid of more Persian words and replace them with Arabic words, and pure like the Gulf Islam, importing a lot of Gulf Islam. So like women, wearing like, let's say, black kind of burqas, and not only wearing black, but then changing the style of the hijab to the Gulf style of the hijab, and replacing words. People refuse to say Khuda Hafiz anymore. They want to just say Allah Hafiz. And I know there's nothing wrong in saying that, but when people try and stamp these things, I feel that there's a lot of politics at play, that's all. I personally don't like that kind. I think that things should be natural. You shouldn't try to impose things, that's all. Right, so Khadim Rizvi, he says Assalamu alaikum. Alaikum assalam, Khadim Rizvi Sahib. Salam Mufti, is it possible to counter fatwa, overrule rulings of the Khawarij? You see, the thing is that they wouldn't accept them. So obviously they would just say that these views are deviant views, but this, the irony is, I want to ask a big question here. Whenever we look at Indo-pak and this whole culture thing, there's this big push of Brelvis and Deobandis. These groups, everybody's probably heard of them, right? And there's obviously the Ahlul Hadith, the Salafi Wahhabi movement as well. But I want to ask something. All of these were formed under British rule. Deobandi school its origins go back to British rule, British Raj. It's only it's under 150 years old. Like this is what it is. The Brelvi school is a reaction to the Deobandi school. I want to ask, where are the traditions of the scholars of India for 1,000 years? Because think about it, Islam's been there since, we're talking 1,000 years Islam has been in India. They've had huge schools, they've had huge setups, huge madrasas, the movements of Delhi, Muhaddith Abdul Haq al-Dahlawi, all his commentaries. You've got, the father of Shah Waliullah Dahlawi, his teachers. You've got Hafidh al-Fatani. You've got all these great, and these people weren't just isolated kind of incidents. They were part of school structures. Where are their schools? Where are their works? What were their names even? See, nobody knows. Because since the rise of Deobandi and Brelvi kind of village wars have begun, they themselves obliterated any history previous to them. They didn't want to promote it because they just want to promote them. So if I keep talking about all the great people of the past, then you won't think I'm so great. You'll think, oh yeah, but those people were great. So this is an interesting point that, yet these people claim to preserve traditional Islam, and where are their links to traditional Islam? Where are the scholars who were the teachers in India? Nobody seems to know. They've just forgotten them all. They just couldn't care less. Zalim dunya, papi sansar. That's the thing, people. That's the thing. Admi jiye to jiye kaise. This is it, people. What else is going on? Well, Sufis have silsila, Mufti. All these silsilas are useless. These silsilas apparently all go through the Arab world. Where were the Muslim scholars that were living in India from 1,000 years? You're telling me nobody was teaching Islam? Where are they? Instead of, you see, the problem with all the Deobandi and the Brailwi chains, and I've got the chains of Hadith too. I've got my authorization Hadith, and it just goes to Shah Waliullah Dahlawi, and then from him it goes off to the Arab world, because he studied in the Arab world. That's fine, but that's for a chain in Hadith. But Shah Waliullah Dahlawi, you know, he was a product of Delhi. Now, he had a madrasa, his father's madrasa, Darul Uloom al-Rahimiyya, and his father would have been a student of other people, who would have been students of other people, who would have been... Where's that tradition gone? You see, so it's just food for thought. I'm just putting it out there. Maybe somebody might listen to this and think, oh yeah, you know, we should check this. Goody Singh says, I'm from Brum. All right. What the hell? Wait a minute. I'll give you what? He wants to do some nutty. This, let me just, okay, there you go. Right, okay, so that's one nutty. Goody Singh was giving some nutty suggestions. Sorry, Goody Singh, I know swing that way, not in that direction. So, Salam Mufti, what do you think about black work? Black work? That's a bit racist, isn't it? What do you think about black work? What is that like an... without paying taxes, they call it black work. This one not nice, my friend. This word now too politically correct, you know. They're gonna think that's like, what the hell? Black work? Is that a command? So, right. Assalamu alaikum. Mufti Abu Layth, is this true that Sahih Bukhari was not only transmitted by Farabri but also by Ibrahim ibn Ma'qal and Hamad ibn Shakir? How reliable are they? Well, if you watch my Bukhari Gate video, I actually go through their things. First of all, Ibrahim ibn Ma'qal's riwayah is very incomplete. The other Ibn Shakir riwayah is hardly found at all, apart from a few pages. And all the scholars who ever transmitted Sahih Bukhari sama'an only did so through Farabri. Hey, this is Eddie from Switzerland. You're doing it. Right, so, what's the question? That's what my boss used to say to me, black work. Billy says that's what his boss used to say to him, but now he can't say black work, he has to say, Bilal, can you carry on can you carry on painting the wall, please? That's Billy, people. By the way, awesome, very reliable removals kind of guy right here, people. So if you need any removals done, that's your guy, Billy. Reach out to him. Okay, man with a van. Right, Salam Mufti. How much influence did Cyrus the Great have on Imam Bukhari? Nargis Iqbal. I don't know. I've never imagined any. I'm baffled by the Nargis ji. Wow. Kya research hai yaar? I don't know what research you're on, but share the research. I'll look into it. It sounds interesting. Right, so you know what I was looking into, though? Check this out, people. I was looking into the similarities, and in fact, most likely, what is presumably, I'm going with the kind of suggestive research that I've come across, that some or a god, one of the popular gods, or in fact, sorry, let me rephrase it, the most popular god from from Petra and the Nabatian kingdom is called Dhushera. Now, or Dhushera as some say. Now, what I was reading into was some research suggesting that Dhushera is actually Shiva from the Hindu belief. And it's quite fascinating when you start looking into the parallels of, because Dhushera was this kind of black stone, black block, a bit similar to the Shiv Lingam kind of thing. I know the fertility, but so what you have from Shiva, very similar. That is the Dhushera embodied, and also symbolic around the thing being snakes, which also is symbolic of Shiva, the bull, and the kind of the thing with Shiva as well, and the whole. But it was quite interesting. I was reading into some of this. It's suggesting that along the trade route, because the Nabatian Empire were, they had like a mercantile empire, so they were merchants. That they survived on being merchants because they were at the center of the silk routes, right? So people bringing silk in from China, from India, coming that way into the Middle East. From here you could either go on to Africa or you could go up into Europe. So the interesting thing was that perhaps those people, or maybe some of the Nabatians that went to India to bring back the spices and the silk and things like this, were influenced by this particular god, and they kind of reenacted the whole thing. And there is also a festival, you see, that is the Dhushera in Hindu kind of practices, and although that is linked with, I believe, Durga and things like this, but it still is ultimately associated with Shiva as well. So what the researcher had said was that maybe most likely some of these Nabatians that were frequenting India may have coincided with the Dhushera festival, which lasts for many days, and then replicated that back home in a similar way, and ended up kind of associating the name not just with the place but then with the god. So Dhushera being Shiva. I just found that very fascinating. It's something I'm still reading into. Sakandar Azam, ahlan wa sahlan, ahlan wa sahlan. What's going on, people? What is going on? Right, so what are some questions? All right. Talk to me, people. Talk to me. Everybody's gone silent, huh? Tu kuja man kuja. Tu kuja man kuja. ¿Dónde estás? ¿Dónde estoy? That's the thing, people. Where have you all gone? Trade is usually a good way to share some religious. Yep, absolutely. What is the concept of revolving around Kaaba? How can we explain it to... I think the question's gone. I think the question is to do with 40 days of Ibadah. David Meddings, Ahlan wa Sahlan. Chaudhry Waleed, Imam, Qazi, Ahlan wa Sahlan, Ahlan wa Sahlan. Please give the view on the beard. Alright, Qazi, alright, I will do. Mufti, tu eres lind, Allah. Right, so let's come back to, first of all, quick question on the 40-day drinking alcohol and the salah being invalid. I do have a video clip on that you can check. I don't believe the hadith to be sahih, and I believe these teachings, if anything, were a deterrent to drink alcohol. They were not a ruling on the judgment of salah. So salah is fine. The other thing is, drugs are not the same as alcohol. It doesn't mean that they're good, but it doesn't mean they're the same as alcohol. So you have to be well aware of things like that. drugs. So for alcohol is a depressant. Now some drugs are depressants, others are not depressants. They may be stimulants, they may be psychoactive drugs, for example, LSD, mushrooms, DMT, things like this. These are not intoxicants, okay? They may be hallucinogenic, but that's not a depressant necessarily. They're psychoactive drugs that play a particular function within the brain chemistry. So drugs are obviously bad, but there's some things which people would brand as drugs, which I think, I don't know if they should really brand them as drugs. Things like DMT, I would be a strong advocate for people, although I haven't tried it yet. Still waiting to, I'm not waiting to get hold of some. I'm not. Sierra Oscar. Do not engage. That's, right, so, but DMT and things like this, I feel these are more entheogens. Alright. These are to connect people with God or consciousness. So I feel that branding these things like drugs, like cocaine, is ridiculous. But anyway, that's my thought. But, there's an interesting theory, Check this out. I'm going through some of this. Graham Hancock is explaining it. And I thought, whoa, that's interesting. That there's certain, there's certain theorists who have claimed that, okay, what led to the rise of consciousness in Homo sapiens? Because you have to remember that modern man, that anatomically modern man, that means people that look just like us, as in they don't have to be the same skin tone, because obviously, but they are anatomically modern. So they're just like any. So if they were to turn up in the morgue, so they're dead, you could not tell in any way that they were a different species. They have the same kind of genetic makeup as modern human, Homo sapiens. So they're not Neanderthals, not Denisovans, not other hybrids, nothing like that, okay? Now, anatomically modern humans have been around probably 200,000 to 300,000 years. But the cognitive revolution that turned everything around for us only took place really within maybe the last 70,000 years or so. So the question was, what is it that did that? And especially you see a further boost maybe about 40,000 years ago. Now, some people have argued that it may have been by them encountering certain plants that had psychoactive properties that triggered the consciousness. I just found that very fascinating as a medium. I thought, you know what? This is just, I'm not saying it is, but I thought it's interesting that could that be symbolically referring to the tree, the fruit, the forbidden fruit, as in with the story of Adam as symbolism? Could it be? That's quite interesting. I just found it quite interesting, so I thought I'd share it. There you go, people. Do with it what you want now. Is it okay to do that? To do what? Right, so peoples, what's going on? Right, so Imam Walid Qazi had asked, can I speak about the beard? Sure. Look, so the beard, I've got detailed videos on the beard anyway. And you can watch them, you can refer to them. They're on YouTube, they're not that long, and I go through much detail. But to sum it up for you, everybody agrees that the ancient Arab civilization, it had a custom, part of which men grew facial hair. They had a beard, so it was part of their kind of their custom and convention. All men did it, just as they had a custom of certain clothing. They dressed in a particular way. They lived in whatever part, let's say Arabian Peninsula, and that's what they did. Now the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was, I mean, he was born and he was raised there amongst his people. So it's very natural for the Prophet to be a part of his society. So he's not going to be walking around in a different fashion kind of clothing. He's going to be exactly like normal people. So the same thing when it comes to the beard. The Prophet ﷺ kept a beard. But so did everybody. All of the disbelievers of the Prophet's time had beards. Abu Jahl had a very long beard. So the beard was not exclusive to Muslims. It was not something that Muslims kind of, oh, here are the Muslims, they have a beard. Everybody had a beard. So the question is, well, why is this Islamic then? This is the question. Why is this an Islamic requirement? Now, people have said, okay, because you won't say riding a camel is a sunnah of, for us to do, just because the Prophet did it. So why is growing a beard? So then what they say is, oh, but there's certain hadith where the Prophet said, let the beard grow. Okay, fine. There are these hadith, but let's look at these hadith. And if you want a very detailed book, I've actually got it here, but it's right. Won't be able to get it right now. But it's by Sheikh Abdullah Juday, who actually brings the entire chains and all the hadith to do with the beard. So first of all, we know that the Prophet had a beard. We also know that he used to trim his beard. So that's in Bukhari, that Ibn Umar says the Prophet used to hold his beard like this and he would just trim it, whatever was below that. Now, him doing this action, the Prophet ﷺ doing this action, was this an obligatory action? Was this an Islamic action? Was this a customary action? Was this just a permissible action? Like today I chose to wear a grey t-shirt as opposed to, I don't know, a blue or a black one. That's just an arbitrary action. It's not something Islamically mandated. So what we can do is look at all the other hadith where the Prophet is instructing to grow the beard. And he says, in some of them they transmitted, oh, grow the beard and differ with the Jews and the Christians. Okay, fine. Now, this appears in the same hadith. You will see, this wording, this exact wording. Let's take this wording. Do this like a command, an imperative, whether it's a positive or negative, as in do this or don't do this, as in grow the beard or do something and differ from the Jews and the Christians. What else is this ruling said in? So let's take a look at what else has mentioned this ruling. So I'll tell you, what has mentioned this ruling is the Prophet said, he said, dye your hair, colour your hair. Right, you should colour your hair as a command. He said, colour your hair, be different to the Jews and Christians. That's a hadith with the same wording. Do we consider colouring or dyeing the hair to be obligatory or sunnah or necessary or strongly recommended? No. Let me give you another one. The Prophet said, pray the salah fi ni'alikum. Sallu fi ni'alikum. Pray with your shoes on. Khaliful Yahuda wan Nasara. Be different to the Jews and the Christians. Oh, it doesn't matter. Oh, okay. Just what I thought. So the question is that's a Sahih, but they don't want to know that. Nobody does that. It's the same wording. So what I say is bring me one Sahih hadith, just one where the Prophet is telling you how to grow a beard. There isn't a single one. The rest is simply interpretation by scholars. Okay. Right, what is going on? Somebody's... Oh, this... Hassan Sabah asking for a shout out. You nutty. Great. Expect honesty when... Alright. So this is the... So it's important to understand power structures. And just because the clergy... People, look, all people have traditionally kept a beard. And to be fair, the beards come back into fashion now. So many people will now keep a beard. But for a few centuries it had gone out of fashion, so people didn't keep a beard. But once again, two forces, the Indian subcontinent kind of movement, like the Deobandi movement, which was really is a modernist movement, which is claiming to be traditional. It's only set up under the British Raj, and it's set up just to be distinct from the British. So anything the British did, they declared it haram straight away and found Islamic stuff to declare it haram. Wearing trousers was haram, for example, because wearing a shirt and a tie and things like this was haram apparently, because the British wore it. Now, okay, at that time when you're being attacked and under the British Raj, fair enough, identitarian politics. But today in 2019, it's ridiculous to adhere to certain politics like that. So, and the dumb thing is they will say things like, don't dress like the Westerners, wear a shalwar kameez. You know, like a kameez shalwar, which the Pakistani dress. And you think, acha, cha, cha. So the Arabs walking around in 6th century Arabia were wearing shalwar kameez. And they were walking around eating biryani. And they were saying, Kida. अच्छा 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 ये logic इस्तेमाल किए हैं. This is the absurdity that we have, people. This is the ridiculousness. So I hope that answers that question. Bring me a single hadith that explains how to grow the beard. One Sahih Sarih hadith. Hatu burhanakum. Right, what else? Right, okay. People, let's talk about the Quran burning. Somebody said bomb in Norway. I've not known of a bomb going off in Norway. I hope a bomb hasn't gone off. May Allah, prevent such tragedies. I mean, but from what I'm aware of is the Quran burning thing in Norway. So I'll answer that because I'm not aware of this other incident. I'll have to check it up once I finish tonight's show. Have you been following Dan Gibson's? I'll come to that. I follow very closely. In fact, I changed my Qibla to Petra. I didn't. Relax. Relaxate. People don't. Just in case you take that snippet and they go, oh, Mufti, the Dajjal. Right, so, look, first of all, right, let's get to this important question. People, I want to discuss burning the Quran in Norway incident. Okay, what do we think about this? First of all, let's be very clear. Burning any books as an act of desecration, I don't mean as in some other act of, like, for example, trying to deface, as in trying to take them out of service is a nice way of putting it, right? So I don't mean in that sense, but what I mean is if you burn something to desecrate it, okay, as a sacrilege, this I would condemn regardless of what faith somebody, or even if it was just a book. If somebody just did not like a particular author and they said, you know what, I don't know, I've never really read the Harry Potter books or anything like this, but let's say somebody didn't like the author, so they say, okay, I'm going to do a public display of book burning. This is ridiculous, okay? This is something that's so medieval. I mean, we need to really be way ahead of the game. This is like so bloody 14th century or 15th. What the hell is going on? Burning books, okay? So I utterly condemn that. If they attack, they attacked, in this case, they attacked Islam, let's say, or hope to attack Islam. If they burnt a Bible, I would have still been, I would have condemned equally. If they, writings of the Dalai Lama, if they tried to burn the, Guru Granth Sahib or something like this, anything is utterly like that is just so pathetic and stupid and counterproductive as an action. Okay, so I would condemn that unequivocally. However, now let's come to the situation at hand. A group of people, far right, decide to do a public display of Quran burning. Right, so they decide to do a Quran burning display. Now, what we have to ask ourselves something here. Let's just pause for a moment. So, I mean, just for those of you who haven't, I'm sure everybody knows the incident. As this person was burning the Quran, one of the protesters, I'm not sure exactly what ethnicity he was, but presumably of some Arab origin, he jumped the crowd and he went and he got into a little scuffle with this person before being arrested. I don't think anything major happened, as in the assault. I don't think it was just a little kind of skirmish before the police could take him away and they arrested him. And I think they kind of, that was it. Because the kind of fight broke out, they shut the thing down. Now, pause that incident. People, I want us to think here. You see, a lot of people are going around praising... does anybody know... What was this person's name, by the way? So, right, okay. So, a lot of people are praising this person. Now, I understand why this person did what he did. I can understand it. Because he obviously became enraged. He saw this as a... Somebody said his name was Ilyas. Okay, so Ilyas. Now, this brother Ilyas, I can understand his anguish. However, I don't actually necessarily commend his action. And I'd like you to listen to me. I do understand it, so I feel it's mitigating circumstances. Right? I feel that I can understand. It's like basically somebody is insulting you, and you lose control and you do something. Okay. Doing something, attacking someone, by default is not acceptable, but here there's mitigating circumstances. It doesn't mean that you're absolved, it just means there's mitigating circumstances. I want us to pause this, I want us to come to the issue at hand. Look, people, we have to, first of all, as a pointer, we have to be secure about the faith. And the faith is what is settled in here. Right? Look, the Quran, or any, if it's Hadith or whatever, by people burning something, they don't get rid of it. Okay? They do not get rid of it. Okay? Right, somebody's saying there's a troll here. Right, okay, now, you see, you don't get rid of... Let's step back a little. What makes us as a species unique? I want you to just ponder over this. It's not strength. Okay. Half the animals on the globe could tear any human to pieces within a few minutes. I mean, we are not the strongest of species. We're not the fastest of species. I mean, we're definitely not. In fact, if it was just sheer survival, and you had one animal and one human stranded on an island, the animal will most likely outsurvive the human. You see, what makes us different from the Neanderthals? What makes us so superior that we dominate the globe? People, it is our intellect. Okay. Our intelligence. The ability to outsmart. This, you see, with that now, let's come back to the picture. Ladies and gentlemen, we have to understand that when it comes from a psychological perspective, anger, enraging someone, anger is the most predictable of human emotions. You can predict it more than any other emotion. Now, when people take these actions, they take the Quran and they try to burn it, they are soliciting, they are expecting, anticipating a particular reaction. They want you to get angry. This is the whole purpose of why they are doing this. They are not damaging your faith. Nothing. Now, you see, by you attacking them physically, they have won. They have achieved their objective. They have proven that you are the Neanderthal person that they claim you to be. The barbarian, the uncivilized. This is exactly what they want. Imagine the kind of mind trashing that would happen if you smiled in return. You see, because anger is the most predictable emotion, not smiling, not joy, not complacency, not contentment. Now, if the onlooker just smiled and thought, because if you're burning a mushaf, with all due respect, it doesn't hurt the Quran. It doesn't hurt Allah. Nothing actually, no harm is done to Islam. We ourselves, if we wish to take the Quran out of service, if we wish to take the mushaf is a printed Quran, we call it a mushaf in Arabic. If we wish to take a mushaf out of service, one way of removing it, as in to get rid of it, as in maybe it's damaged or there's been a misprint or things like this, is to burn it, incinerate it. That is actually one of the Islamic methods. So Uthman radiallahu anhu, the third caliph, that's how he got rid of the other Qur'ans, the other mushafs. He burnt them. Burning the Qur'an is not something, we need to get all inflated about. We need to stop idolizing people who can't control emotions. I understand this brother, Elias, why he did. I understand it, but I don't agree with it. Because all he did was just gave in. You see, he let the Muslim side down by just showing that we are exactly what you expect us to be. We are enraged, easily triggered barbarians. So people, the prophets, somebody came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and he said, Ya Rasulullah, advise me, give me some personal advice. You advise many people, give me something personal. The Prophet said, okay. He said, La taghdab. Do not allow yourself to be enraged. Do not let anger consume you. And he said, okay, but tell me what else in life. The Prophet said, La taghdab. And he said it 3 times, La taghdab. This, people, is one of the great, this is what in Arabic there's a term hilm. Okay, not ilm with an ayn, the term hilm with a ha. Now, this is associated with, obviously, like wisdom, but it's associated, and like judgment, wise judgments, but it's associated with the ability to remain collected, composed, to not lose control. Ibrahim alayhi salam is described, like many prophets, as halim. You see, like to remain in control. Now, my point is that what I'm trying to say here, I know I've seen a lot of people try and use this person's photograph as a display picture, and they've said he's our hero, warrior, true warrior of Islam. In all honesty, he's not. And if anything, he's actually let us down. But I understand there's mitigating circumstances. But we really need to control. We need to kind of, like, if people want to insult us, insult us. And what? Like if somebody says, oh, I'm gonna. In fact, some of the best things to look at is people who, when they're being insulted, you should see how certain people, when they handle it by taking the joke on themselves, that takes an immense amount of self kind of security to be able to do that. One has to be very secure with themselves. But yeah, it's disappointing. So yeah, although I do disagree with and I condemn burning books and burning especially sacred books, however, attacking someone who is doing it is wrong as well. I do believe that, look, we have to understand something. We have to advocate for free speech. I seriously do advocate for free speech, even if it means that people have the right to insult Islam. If they want to insult it, insult it. You see, to me, Islam, it doesn't gain or lose by you insulting it. So exactly, and somebody said attacking brings you to a lower level than the perpetrator. Exactly, and it just proves. You see, the annoying thing is, it proves the point. It is exactly what human beings are not known for. We're not actually, known for our force. This is not. You see, it's intelligence, people. It is the genius of the intellect that makes us who we are. Outsmart your opponent. Think 2 steps ahead of them. Okay. And that will be your greatest strength. That on many occasions your opponent will underestimate your intelligence. See, so this is what I advocate. This is what I advise each and all, that look, pride yourself on your intelligence. Not on like trying to say, oh, I can beat the hell out of this person. And then, okay, and you just proved his point to start off with, that I can't hold my emotions, I need to go beat up someone. I heard he had a face for crime. Oh, Billy, right, that actually brings me to an interesting discussion. It's worth sharing now that Billy's brought it up. You see, it ties into this discussion of censorship, that this having censorship and controlling things, a censorial kind of outlook, we got into a little discussion, some friends and me, about some clip. Now, I had never seen this clip before. I didn't even know the people involved, but so I'm not trying to defend the person per se, because the person may be an idiot generally, or he may not. I didn't even know his name. I didn't know anything. I just saw a clip. It was some kind of a presenter, some Muslim, and basically he had some kind of correspondent, and there was a group of people on the other side with the cameraman, and there were a group of young lads. They weren't all, most of them were probably black. I think there were some Asians or there were definitely some brown faces in there as well, maybe Arabs or something, but it was like a strong ethnic kind of thing. Now, the person said some joke about, oh, do you know what this reminds me of? Crime Watch. And he started laughing. Now, this, then there was something about, we got to beware of racism and stuff like this and all this kind of stuff. So we got into this discussion on this group of ours, amongst friends, about this. And it may just be because of the generation I'm from, that I'm not from the younger generations. We disagreed quite strongly on this matter, that, you see, my point was that, look, I understand it could be inappropriate and wrong, as in he messed up. Like, it's not a formal, like he's advertising, it's because he's streaming on TV, he said something which is inappropriate for TV. So, it's like, if let's say you're delivering a lecture and you swore accidentally, that's, you've messed up. You've said something wrong. But is this as a joke, because he clearly said it as a joke and he laughed, as a joke in and of itself, something wrong and evil that needs to be condemned. Because I said, let's be honest, we all do it. Everybody does this amongst themselves. So is this not hypocrisy if we can do it? But if we see somebody else doing it, we haven't, like, we're part of this outrage industry to kind of like, oh, going to hell. I mean, we could say, oh my God, you messed up, or you shouldn't have said that there. It's inappropriate for the context. So the context is fine, I get that. But is it in and of itself an evil? Like, so people are saying, oh my God, that's racist. And I said, I understand that, but it was a joke. Like, the guy's saying it as a joke. He's saying, and they weren't all black, to be fair. So it's not exclusively targeting black people. There were some Asians and that amongst them as well. But I understand it was a joke, like, because the guy's laughing. Now, are we not allowed to crack jokes anymore? Like, what kind of a world do we live in? Because can't we determine from the context? Right, so we got into this discussion, and I thought it's quite interesting, actually, because a lot of the younger, like my younger friends, they totally couldn't agree, like, see what I was saying. And I think some of the older guys, like my age, they could. And they were like, yeah, I mean, you know, that's not, like, it's okay, it's a joke in bad taste, but it's a joke. It's not something like, you know, like, oh, it's like when I've said on here, like, sometimes some people have come on and they've been from Rotherham or something, and I've said, oh my God, the Rochdale gang made a joke about grooming, or I've done something. But all jokes are generally, any truly funny joke is always politically incorrect. That's why it's funny. And I just feel that, you know, I don't like this culture of absolute censorship, of saying people don't have a right to be, you know, to make jokes if they're not politically correct, or to do these kind of things, and they have the right to be condemned as an evil in and of itself. I don't just mean as a mess, as a kind of cock-up. That I understand. Like, obviously, if you said something which wasn't appropriate for the context, that's like, you know, people would say, oh, that's a cock-up, like the person's messed up. That makes sense. But to say that's an evil in and of itself, so I just find this, yeah. And it is, so there are certain laws within the UK as well, that certain comedians like Rowan Atkinson and these people had kind of passionately fought against. Like, they tried to argued against, I think it was the Section 5, the amendment about causing insult. Is this a legal offence? Because you see, we as Muslims might argue this in saying that, oh my God, you know, this is an insult, it should be illegal. But then if you watch, in fact, Rowan Atkinson has, you know, the comedian Mr. Bean, he has a lecture on YouTube where he's addressing why he's challenging these things. And he gives an example of a man who was arrested for calling a policeman's horse gay because it was insulting. So the man was arrested for calling the horse gay. He said, oh, that looks like a gay horse. So they arrested him because it's insulting to the homosexual community. So like this, there were several cases he mentions that where people had made a joke and they were arrested because it's insulting to that community. So, you see, I feel that there should be freedom of speech. And we need to immunize ourselves against this. And there's a difference between incitement to hatred, by the way. And people can tell. They're not dumb. Like, a context can tell if you're on stage or if you're cracking a joke somewhere between where you're rallying a crowd to say these people are, you know, infectious and they're like this, they're a disease to society. That these things, human beings can tell these things. You know, they're not stupid. So, yeah, so that's my point. I hope that makes some sense. A few of you had asked my opinion on the matter. I do not. So just to be clear, I do not advocate what Elias did. I don't commend him. But I understand why he did it. I feel it is the most weakest of all responses, and it is the most predictable of all human emotions to become enraged and to be angry. in some ways, I feel he let us down. I don't think he should be celebrated, but I think in turn we need to kind of strengthen our kind of collective spiritual immunity. Our immune system needs to kind of get stronger. We can't get offended every time somebody says, oh, you know, this happened. Oh, you know, oh, your prophet was like this. Oh my God, we're so relax. It doesn't do anything to us. Say as you please, you know. You've got a mouth, speak. Say what you want. Cool. I hope that that kind of helps. Cool. Right. So Farid Awais, ahlan wa sahlan, ahlan wa sahlan. Mufti Abu Layth, what are your thoughts, opinions on Surah Al-Kahf and Surah Al-Haft? What are my opinions on Surah? What does that even mean? Alright, voting. People, the votes are upon us. It's only a few weeks away. So I think now I would definitely say young people definitely should vote. Make sure you vote. Right? I do strongly encourage that we participate in this kind of action. We take action to see action. You know, we have nobody but ourselves to blame. I do personally passionately support Jeremy Corbyn, right? Oh, Jeremy Corbyn. I do think that Jeremy Corbyn on some things kind of he fell short, and he wasn't clear enough on certain responses. The debate between him and Boris Johnson, for example, he wasn't clear about his position on where he personally stood on Brexit, but he should have, which I think they've been too sloppy about. The whole Brexit referendum thing, they've been so sloppy. You know, check the bloody comments. I said that suggestion 2 years ago, what they're saying now. I said it then. I said that, look, simple, come up with the best deal, put it to the public. This deal or remain. That's how it works. And that's now a part of the manifesto that Jeremy Corbyn declared. I thought, good work, but I was only typing that on the comment section about 2 years ago. Right, so the point is that people do definitely get out there, do vote. It is not haram, it is not kufr, it is not shirk. Definitely do it, and I would personally say vote Labour. Alright, because Jeremy Corbyn, you know what? You see substance in him though. I feel that politicians are useless. A bunch of twats, honestly. I feel, with the exception of a tiny few, and I feel from that tiny few, who you have hope in is people like Jeremy Corbyn. He definitely is a man of character. He's a man of, who actually shows some care. So, yeah, so I'd definitely say that. Just the same way I felt about Imran Khan in Pakistani politics. Right, now let's move on. Every madhab has some ease and difficulties. To follow whichever you feel is convenient and comfortable. Muhammad Musa Shah. Yes, of course, you can pick and choose from certain madhabs. But, you see, I would say, at the same time, do try to learn Islam. Learn a madhab. You'd have to learn a madhab, I guess. There's no, even if you don't follow everything from that madhab, but at least you have a base. So, big up Jezza. Alright. Right, so what's going on? Let's take some questions, peoples. I haven't been looking at the Facebook comment questions here. Let's see. What is going on? What is going on, people? I'm just trying to bring up some questions that people have already. No. Come on, you can do it. You could do it. What was hilarious, people, was my daughter, youngest daughter, Zara. She's only 5 now, but when she was about 3 and she was in nursery, which had normal English staff, it wasn't like, it was only down the road, but she started to develop like a Russian accent. I used to find it so hilarious. She's like, we could do it. I know, we could do I was like, why is she speaking with a Russian accent? It's okay, we can do it. This one, no problem. Right, can you please address the topic of following the Quran? I've addressed this already. Some people say that the utbah is not reliable. Is that true? The utbah, people, is a Maliki fiqh book. I mean, it's just named after the author, Al-Utbi. Now, it is... See, people saying it's not reliable, I don't really buy that, because what makes something reliable, what makes it unreliable? We know that the utbah was very popular in Al-Andalus, in Muslim Spain. You know, generations after Al-Utbi, you have the great Maliki Don Ibn Rushd, the granddaddy, people, the granddaddy, not the grandson philosopher, the granddaddy himself. He has his commentary, which is up there, you can't see it. It's in 22 volumes here, called Al-Bayan wa Tahsil. He is one of the authoritative voices within the madhab. How can he be getting this wrong? How, if Al-Utbiyah is non-reliable, then what is Ibn Rushd doing, spending, he says, 20 to 30 years of his life writing this commentary on it? It makes no sense. And he is the authoritative voice within the madhab. You will have, so for example, you will have Khalil, Mukhtasar Khalil, relies on the interpretation of Ibn Rushd to come to his conclusion in fiqh. So it's just because it has certain opinions in there. Now, yes, it doesn't mean all opinions have to be acceptable, but because it has certain opinions in there that people wanted to shy away from, like anal sex, for example. This is an issue that is transmitted in the utbiyah. So where Imam Malik said that anal sex was not haram. Now, this obviously bothered people as Islam, like all other religions, became institutionalized. And as always, people want to control people. And one of the first things they want to control always is what goes on in the bedroom. It's an interesting trait of the men of cloak. That they want to control what happens when the cloak comes off. Man of the cloth. This is it, you see. Men of the cloth. Now, the issue is, these are the kind of things, I think, why the hate on the text, Maliki fiqh text called the utbiyah. Right, let's move on. What are the questions going on? What are the questions? Can you unblock me so I can participate? That doesn't make sense, does it? Because if you're blocked, how can you see this? How can you be commenting? What was so gharib when Islam began? With the hadith, Bada al-Islamu ghariban. Now, I don't know, that's an interesting, I feel that this is open to interpretation. The hadith that says, Khadim Rizvi says, if I do it in the naughty place, how do the scholars find out? Khadim Rizvi Sahab, I think you've already been doing it to an entire nation. No, just joking. Right, so Bada al-Islamu ghariban. Right, now this means that Islam began as a stranger or something strange or different. And the hadith says, and a time will come when it will return to being something strange and different. Now people, I'll tell you the wrong interpretation. Okay, this is what it doesn't mean. Let me tell you this. What it doesn't mean is that some people walk around, let's say, the streets of London, walk around, I don't know, UK, walk around in the United States, in Europe, dressed like foreigner strangers because they're wearing a jubbah, what looks like a frock. So they're wearing this big kind of Saudi, let's say, garments, and they're walking around with kind of flip-flops on, and they, you know, got the Saudi scarf on, and people are like, whoa, that, you know, who's this foreigner, who's this stranger? And so they're saying, so you're treating us like a stranger. Bada al-Islamu ghariban. Allah, tuba lil ghuraba. This is not what the hadith meant, 100%. Okay. It was nothing to do with, I know, if you start dressing, it's like tomorrow if we all started dressing like, I don't know, in the Chinese Chairman Mao suits, or we all started to dress like, I don't know, the Hindu Brahmins, and then obviously people would think, whoa, why all these people dress like that? And then we're like, Bada al-Islamu ghariba. This is not what it meant. Islam was never a fashion accessory. It was never a fashion statement. Islam comes back to what humans are actually humans for. The intellect. It was to do with ideas. It was to do with reason. It's a faith construct. It's something that is comprehended. It's something that is understood and believed. It's not, so the fact that it came as something strange, the hadith states that in time to come, maybe it will get so enshrouded and clouded by other perceptions that people will have to strip away these things once again. And I feel in many ways that's like challenging a lot of the new superstitions found within religion, challenging the institutionalization of faith, and returning to a deen of what was the fitrah, of a natural state. So, alright, yeah, what do I think of the anti-Semitic propaganda against Jeremy Corbyn? I don't buy it. I think it's just propaganda. I mean, Jeremy Corbyn, you know, this is the problem, that if you're critical of... See, this is what I'm saying, that this is the problem, you see, and this is why we need freedom of speech. Because when you're critical of something, it's insulting. And when it's insulting, now, because people are failing to make a distinction between criticizing political policies of a state and criticizing a faith. So, you see, most people who attack, let's say, Israel on its policies, and I think Israel has outrageous, ridiculous policies. It just doesn't care. It has no consideration for complete disregard to the sanctity of human life. But so to criticize Israel is seen as being anti-Semitic, whereas if I criticized France or criticized Germany on its policies or criticized China, I'm not seen as anti-Semitic. You're not, you know, it's not. Or if you criticize Pakistan on its policies, so you can criticize any nation on its policies except Israel. If you criticize it, you become anti-Semitic, because there's laws against anti-Semitic. This is why we need, you know, freedom of speech. And I disagree. I really do believe in the primacy of freedom of speech and advocate it, even if it's, you know, like, I do believe that the Holocaust and things like this, they did occur. I mean, the numbers, whatever, you know, more or less people say, but the whole phenomenon sounds very real from a historical perspective, and the propaganda. That said, there are people who've denied the Holocaust and said that it hasn't happened. But I would say that from a freedom of speech perspective, that they shouldn't be kind of imprisoned for having a view. Even if they're utterly wrong, I would disagree with them and say that they're wrong, actually. I would believe that it did occur. But just by somebody saying it didn't occur, there shouldn't be a law. You understand? Because it precludes, it prevents I mean, I understand it offends people, but it's that, you know, there's that quote that the freedom to be inoffensive is no freedom at all. You see, that what kind of a freedom is that? You have the freedom to say whatever you like as long as it offends nobody. You know, have you seen that? There's a clip a sketch of some guy, I think it's an Australian sketch, where some guy's walking past and a group of friends, they say, hey, can you take a photograph for us? So the guy says, yeah, sure, no problem. He says, okay, say cheese. And then one of the women says, I'm vegan actually, and I find that quite repulsive. And he says, okay, so no problem. He says, just count backwards. Let's count backwards from 3. And then somebody says, well, yeah, I mean, you know, why don't you just disregard dyslexia? So those, and then somebody says, yeah, my nephew's dyslexic, I'm triggered. And then this whole thing goes on. Like, everything he suggests is problematic. He says, okay, why don't we just smile? And then somebody says, oh, like, so there's something, you know, or, you know, oh, so we have to put on this persona, we have to do this, and the meme, I mean, it's not a meme, but the sketch, it says, this sums up the world we live in. You know, everybody's just offended, like in faltuke, you know, it's like there's no reason, just I'm offended, shut up, goddammit. Right, what are some other questions? Let's take some questions from here. How do you act, or should one think when interacting or maintaining friendship with fellow Muslims with whom you have various differences of opinion, from fiqh to hadith to sheikhs? And when should you put those differences on the table? Ralia Abdullahi. Right, so I mean, I would just say it's the human kind of courtesy. You'd have a common sense to go about it. I'm sure you'd navigate it fine. Look, we'll never agree with people, right? We've got to understand that. We'll always have some differences. We'll have some preferences. We'll have some, and that's what, and we won't even agree with ourselves. So where I stand today, a few years from today, I may completely disagree with my tastes, my choices, my opinions in just a matter of a few years. So how do you think, so what do you think of other people then? So I think, I would say, look, don't worry about these things. And sometimes, it's interesting, because I was reading up and thinking about this a little while back, that you see, friendships, if we're calling them friendships, yeah, the company, the preferred or a choice of being in the company of certain people. You see, we have this understanding that this can only be truly achieved or truly optimized through vocal communication. But really, I was thinking about it, that if you think about it, animals, they prefer the company of certain animals. I mean, they don't have speech. I mean, you could say there's other elements of communication, non-verbal communication, but it's not kind of constructive communication the way we can communicate. So because we have the ability to communicate, we sometimes feel that all things have to be communicated. And this is why we have the greatest miscommunication. So, and animals don't, despite their inability to communicate. So sometimes, like you could have a friend, let's say a particular friend or somebody you like being in the company of. You could just be in the company of that person, and you just like being in the company. Like, maybe you don't have to say much. Maybe you don't have to really be talking so much. I mean, you can be, but you don't have to be. Sometimes you can just like being in the company of certain people. And I think we've forgotten that, or many people have forgotten that they feel that because we are a species with the ability to communicate, that we must therefore be communicating. And if we're not communicating verbally, then something's wrong. But it isn't necessarily. I mean, sometimes, you could be with a mate, and you could just be, I don't know, you could be just driving somewhere, let's say, and you could be going somewhere, or you could be just sat there, you're not talking much, maybe you're just doing something or just watching, but you enjoy the company. So I feel that this is an important lesson. It's way overlooked, I feel. And I feel that it causes also, not just in friendship, but in relationships, it causes a huge problem as well. So, yeah, just some food for thought, people. So basically, it doesn't mean it's a red flag. Because sometimes people feel if you're not communicating, it's a red flag. Something must be wrong. It doesn't have to be. And people, it's just creature communication. It's creature. At the end of the day, we are all just animals. All right, so somebody has asked, can it be done? I don't know what that is. Somebody's asked about what do I think of Muhammad bin Salman and his policies. To be honest, I kind of welcome them. Depends what policies, obviously. I mean, you're speaking about a person, and then I'm not up to date with this. I don't really follow MBS so closely, and he's also perpetrated atrocities like the Khashoggi incident. Is really just MBS. just cutting out what he feels is BS. So you have things like that, like killing, kind of assassination deployments. But then you have a sense of modernization that he's bringing to the country, Saudi Arabia. He's got rid of the Wahhabi kind of shadow, if you like, in the background. And I appreciate that. Right, so let's take a look at some other questions, people. Would these lot attack Sahaba for burning the words of Allah that formed the Quran? There's so many examples. The guy was not a hero. Oh yes, Kareem, I agree absolutely with you, and I've kind of said that. So hopefully you can catch what I said. هل أجداده عليه السلام كلهم مؤمنون? Or the grandparents of the Prophet. Okay, here's an interesting point. I'll mention a bit about Dan Gibson. I do follow Dan Gibson quite closely. I mean, I'm not up to date on everything that Dan Gibson has said, but I do follow him quite closely, to be fair. I look into what he said. I'm not just somebody that disregards something just because it goes against what I'm saying. A lot of Islam revisionists have argued that Makkah Muslims, they feel that Islam did exist, like the Prophet did exist. Most of them do accept that, like Patricia Crone and other people. They feel that Makkah could not have been as significant as Muslims claim, later Muslims claim. And to be fair, I think they've got a point, that I don't think Mecca was a significant city at all, or even a popular town. I think this is something that is recreated innocently by later Muslims. Not because they were trying to do propaganda. I think this is what they assumed would have been the reality. But now research seems to show that Mecca was not really like that. The other thing is that a lot of these people felt that Mecca may have not been where Mecca is. So Patricia Crone and other people, I think Michael Cook and some others, they argued that Mecca may have been more in the northern kingdoms, so in the kingdom of Sham. Now, some people then suggested Petra. Now, although from what I've read of Patricia Crone, I don't think she conclusively said that that was the case, but I believe that she felt she wasn't convinced with it being Mecca, as in situated at Mecca. So she felt it was somewhere else, but she wasn't quite sure where, but she was open to kind of suggestions. That's what I've read from some of her, and I'm still going through a few of her kind of works and articles and stuff. Now, right, so Dan Gibson, however, Dan Gibson has done a lot of research, which I am in some ways grateful to, because, you know, we have to honor ilm, even if it comes out with things that we don't like. But at the end of the day, this comes back to the point which I've been saying, that what we lack in our tradition is a critical review. So, coming back to Dan Gibson's point, he's gone around and he's got a book, Qiblas in Early Islam, or Early Qiblas in Islam. Now, he measures, I think, is it 160 or something masjids around the world, their foundations and things like this. But what he tries to do, several of them he visits them himself, and some he can't, so he uses certain satellite footage. He does explain the exact method of which satellites he's used and how he's accessed that footage. He explains all of this. He's very transparent, to be fair, I think. I don't believe he's as innocent necessarily as some people feel that he's very innocent. I think, you know, this tongue-in-cheek, he's definitely... he is doing a bit of the naughty. He is definitely, I feel that. But that said, I think it's all within bounds and limits. I don't think he's falsifying evidence, because to do that, he would just get caught out, and it would ruin everything. So he's measured the foundations of many masjids and found them. He's found, like, those masjids, the ancient foundations dating from the 1st century of Islam, seem to be pointing not towards Mecca but towards Petra. Now, he's got in his book, he's got diagrams and the standard deviation. He's got, like, he's compared how many degrees are they off from Petra, how many degrees are they off from Mecca. Now, I think, is it the 60s odd or whatever it is, there's a certain majority that he focuses on. They seem to definitely be always more closely aligned to Petra than they are to Mecca. And there's some that are to Mecca and there's some that are completely off. Like, so they're just pointing south. So North African masjids seem to be just pointing south. The Andalusi mosques, the Spanish mosques, seem to be just pointing south, which makes no sense at all. And then he comes up with a theory which I think is ridiculous. That theory is ridiculous. Well, they were just replicating how they pointed from Damascus. I thought, that's just, come on. However, what do I feel about all this, these masjids pointing towards Petra? Is this is it just wrong? I think that he may be right. You know, that these masjid foundations may have pointed towards Petra. Now, or as in more closer to Petra than to Mecca. Now, why is the question? Now, my theory, people, is that Petra, unbeknowingly, not innocently, if you like, not as a part of like a scheme or a plot, but Petra has, I feel, been an actor, if you like, an active agent in the formation of certain Islamic phenomena. Now, I feel that, I'll come to this point a bit more, I feel that began with, really, and was concretized by one of the great grandfathers of the Prophet, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. His name was Qusay, and that wasn't his actual name. His actual name, I believe, was Zayd, but Qusay is what he's known by. Qusay, you see, in his lifetime, you see, when Qusay was a young man, when he was just a little boy. When he was a little boy, his father passed, he's the son of Kilab, his father passes away. Now, his mother remarries this man who is an Arab. He's from her tribe. I believe they were Khuza' I believe they may have been Quda'i actually, but he's from her tribe. He marries her, but he lives in Sham. Now Qusay has an elder brother. I believe his name is Zuhra, but because he's like a young man, so the stepfather, the new father, he leaves him. He's not really bothered, but because this is an infant, he takes Qusay and his wife, Qusay's mum, up to Sham. Now he takes them home to this place called Wadi al-Qura, the Valley of Settlements. Now Petra, I believe that was Petra, because when you look at it, it states that Wadi al-Qura had the tribes, certain tribes settled there, like the tribes of Bani Udhra. Now Bani Udhra were settled around northern Arabia, but also around Petra. Petra also had the name al-Qura. You see, the mother of settlements. Wadi was between valleys, Wadi al-Qura. Most Muslim historians, when they write about Wadi al-Qura, they say that that Qusay's stepfather, his name was Rabi', by the way, that Rabi' lived in Wadi al-Qura. We're not quite sure where that is. We think it's up there by Madain Saleh, or some people say it's over here. And so they don't seem to know where it is, because Petra, after, like maybe within a century or so after the Prophet, or a century, within 2 centuries, definitely disappears. So people forget about Petra and only rediscover it in really the 18th, 19th century. So now, okay, so let's get to that story. So Qusay seems to be brought up there. Qusay means a stranger. Okay, the term Qasi comes from the word Qasi, Qaf Sad Ya. And the people of that region, although his stepfather was really good with him, but the people of that region had a disregard for him. They saw him as a foreigner. And they would call him Qasi, and they wouldn't call him Qasi, they would call him Qusay, which is a diminutive form. So it's like disparaging, more disrespectful. So they used to call him Qusay, Qusay. So this Qusay got like a little stranger. This stuck with him. So this became his name. Now Qusay always had this identitarian issue going on, like an identity crisis, because the people around him, Bani Udhra, and these people would never accept him. So he told his mum, this is transmitted, he complained that, oh, they keep calling, every time I say something, they say, oh, who are you? You're a foreigner, you know, you're not from us, you're not. So she says to him that, don't you worry about them. You're the son of Kilab. Kilab was from a much more noble tribe, the tribe of Quraysh. Now, whether Quraysh were that noble or not in the eyes of other Arabs, the important thing is they definitely were noble now in Qusay's eyes. So Qusay has this longing for this sense of identity and belonging. He wants to. So as he becomes a grown man, he leaves Sham and returns to Mecca. When he returns to Mecca, they say, you know, he was very handsome, he was charming, he was a strong man. They say he was a warrior, he was a very good fighter. And he charms his way, or he's seen as attractive. He marries the daughter of the high priest in Mecca, who's from this tribe called Khuza'a. When the high priest who holds the keys to the Kaaba dies, the daughter inherits it, and he's the husband, so he gets it. So he becomes the owner of the keys. He then expels Khuza'a, this tribe, from Mecca. This leads to like a mini civil war. So what he does is he makes a cry for all Quraysh people, close or far Quraysh, wherever you are, to come to Mecca and to join in this fight. He also calls his Shami cousins, you know, like his step siblings and his cousins, those that from which I believe would have been in Petra. He calls them. Now they come from Sham and they join in the fight, and eventually he wins. There is a kind of like an arbitration that takes place, but he kind of gets the upper hand. After that, he's in control of Mecca. He refashions how Mecca is established. He actually calls for a migration of all Qurayshis, because they never used to live in Mecca, wherever they are scattered, to come back to Mecca, and he will offer them allotments and settlements. So he says, if you're close to Quraysh, you can live within the Mecca thing. If not, you can live in the valley outskirts. He will give you land. So he actually calls, so there's this mass migration of Qurayshis that move towards Mecca and settle. He rebuilds the Kaaba and changes some of the design. Now he also builds houses as settlements close to the Kaaba, then a layer out, encircling the Kaaba, then encircling the Kaaba. He gives these to certain notary people of Quraysh. He's also known for several kind of battles defending Quraysh against many tribes. He was the most powerful leader that Quraysh ever had before Islam. Obviously the Prophet is the most powerful leader that Quraysh ever had. That's with Islam. But pre-Islam, Qusay is the ultimate. This, I feel, is the reason that, because maybe some of the changes he made, he also dug up a lot of the wells in and kind of set up Mecca as a much more powerful kind of place. This is, I feel, that the influences he brought may have been from where he was brought up. So maybe the way he fashioned the houses around the Kaaba, the settlements, the encirclement, this may have been influenced by his upbringing in Petra. This may be the reason why many historians in our books have referred to Mecca, the Kaaba, as Kaaba Shamia. You see, in our own books, I believe it may be in Bukhari as well, they refer to the Kaaba as the Kaaba Shamia, the Kaaba from Sham. This led some people to believe maybe the Kaaba was in Sham. But I believe that this was because it was the Shamized Kaaba. That the people, because of the influence in fashioning it, was so Shami, it was referred to as the Shami Kaaba. Sham is the Middle Eastern region, like Damascus and Petra and these places, Jordan and so on. So, okay, so that's, now with that understanding, let's go back to the Dan Gibson thing. Now, I feel that, you see, we have to understand that historic civilizations, and I mean thousands of years ago, I feel that they did have much more knowledge of the globe than people several centuries ago. So I do feel that there were maybe certain advanced civilizations that were destroyed. I do kind of buy into what certain people like people today, I've gone through some of these things actually today. Let me just check. Right, okay, it's not here. But people like Graham Hancock and other people, what they've argued, that the Younger Dryas incident most likely demolished these ancient civilizations that were quite advanced. I do find that quite convincing and compelling, especially with the temple archaeological sites like Göbekli Tepe, which archaeologically are dated to 11,500 years ago. It's impossible that hunter-gatherers just put their spears down and built massive kind of establishments all of a sudden. That just doesn't make any sense. So we know, this is what I feel that we definitely know from evidence, like even taking a look at maps that Ptolemy, maps that other people had, maps that the Reis Piri map, the Ottoman cartographer, the person who drew maps, and he says, I drew this from over 100 archaic sources. Now, on his map, which is from the 15th century, I believe, there's Antarctica. Now, Antarctica is not discovered till the 1800s by the Russians. But he draws it accurately. And he also even drew the certain rivers which were covered by ice since the Younger Dryas. So, not to mention other landmass that's been underwater on other maps, yet visible on these maps. It's been underwater since the Younger Dryas, since 11,000 years ago. So, I feel that people knew how to navigate, and then maybe certain civilizations, it got lost to them, and then humans rediscovered it, in much more recent history. So we see these ancient civilizations like the pyramids, and Petra is one of the ancient civilizations, the Aztec kind of civilizations, the Mayans, the Peruvian kind of monoliths that we have, megaliths, all these things, they seem to be aligned with constellations. Now, I feel that, you see, similarly, Petra would have been aligned with constellations. Now, I don't believe the Nabatians built Petra. Neither do I believe the pharaohs built the pyramids from scratch. I feel that they built upon previous structures, because it seems that they kind of inherited certain sites and built upon them, just as the people in the Amazon built on the kind of Olmecs and all this, the prior civilization stuff. They didn't come up with it. So I feel Petra was similar, and it is aligned to constellations. So it may have been that because the empire had a mercantile people that of trade that were going around, that they traveled to China, they traveled to India, they went to different places because they were trade specialists, right? Now, it may have been that they had set up certain devotion sites, certain temples, in line with the constellation that Petra is aligned to. So therefore they had these devotion sites already set up to that constellation. So it would be pointing towards Petra. It would kind of be aligned in that way. This is what I am currently understanding. I'm reading up a lot of things, and this is what I feel may have happened at this stage. I mean, I may review this theory in time to come, but if I find more information, and I feel that because the Nabatians were also Arabs, they were Arabs, pre-Islamic Shami Arabs, that when Muslims reached those places, the Nabatian Empire had kind of long dissolved and dissipated. So because they were Arabs and these people were prior Arabs, most likely they just inherited their sites and took them over. And because they were already aligned to Petra, which was Sham, and all companions and Tabi'in knew where Sham was, it was right just above the Hijaz, which is where Mecca is. So they may have just thought, yeah, that's good enough. Sham, let's just point it from here. Because one of the questions was, how did Muslims know which way Qibla was? Because the compass did not exist. So you have to understand that, especially from China, how did they know which way the Qibla was? I feel that they inherited the sites from the Nabatians. And so what's happened is the early foundations were maybe pointing towards Petra. But so people like Dan Gibson may be right, but for the wrong reasons. It's not because Petra was Mecca, but I feel it may have been because these devotion sites were close enough, and they may have been set up centuries before based on the knowledge of the constellations that Petra is aligned to. So that's my kind of current theory. So I feel that to be honest, I've not really come across anybody providing any meaningful answer to what Dan Gibson has said. And I feel that this actually is, I feel it's the truth, and I feel it's actually like, wow, everything then starts to fall into place. Like you start to see that, that makes actually a lot of sense. And if, you see, it makes sense, because one of the questions is, why did they used to call Makkah al-Qura when it's not really, it was only a small town? It would make sense if Qusay had called it al-Qura, because Qusay came from Petra, which was called al-Qura, so the mother of settlements. And now that this was his new kingdom, he was set to establish it, that this is now the mother of settlements. So it just seems to all fall into place. I don't know, Allahu A'lam. I'm still looking for it. So yes, I do, in short, I do feel that a lot of these people are right, but for the wrong reasons. So I feel that Dan Gibson is kind of right, maybe. Just as Patricia Crone, I feel she's right. I feel these people are right, but for the wrong reasons, that's all. So yeah, people, I think with that, shall we wrap it up? Was there any, is there any masala going on this week? Is there, what's the gossip, people? What's the gossip? Let me just see. Is there any gossip going on? Any fitan fasad? Anything? Is Prince Andrew? Prince Andrew, after his his killer interview, has now set up an agency on how to coach people for interviewing. That is the best interview, honestly. I have to, oh my god, that is just so epic. Somebody said, is it haram to believe in evolution? Of course not. Evolution definitely happened. You can watch my video on evolution. We talked about that. Just search for it on YouTube. Yeah, Prince Andrew would just say, don't sweat it, bro. Sweat, I've stopped doing that. It's just something I no longer do. Except, of course, I'm sweating right now, but that's because I've just regained the ability to do it in the last few years. But no. I absolutely, you know what killed it for me though was the Taiwan. I just could not believe somebody would, I couldn't believe that somebody would even try that. Like, where is, I don't understand, like, I'm so baffled. I'm trying to think, could you really, like, could somebody really say something like that? That, you see, when I travel, I always wear a tie, so I'm clearly not wearing a tie in that photograph, so it cannot be me. That's the confidence you want in life, people. Gain that confidence in life. Well, our punishments, right, people. Kosher meat, it's all good. It's all good, people. It's all good. Right, what's going on? What's going on? Was there anything? Anything? Right, no. Shall we leave it with that? Yep, that's it. I think we'll leave it with that. We've covered quite a few things today, inshallah. Let's wrap it up. That's it. Khadim Rizvi, the confidence. It's like the confidence you want. That's it. Khadim Rizvi Saab as well. Khadim Rizvi Saab. You know, Bechara is, I don't know whether it's from an accident or what, but he's disabled in the chair. But then he's telling other people, go fight. Go fight, come on, go fight. It's the confidence, Prince Andrew confidence you want in life, people. So that's, in the words of, who is it? Jaun Elia. I believe it's Jaun Elia, it might not be actually this one. That, Hum wo hain jo khuda ko bhi bhul gaye. He says, like, you're asking about us. We are those who have even forgotten God. that we've even forgotten God. That we are those who have even forgotten God. He says, Hum to wo hain jo khuda ko bhi bhul gaye. Tu meri jaan kis guma mein hai. He says, you, my dear, what? I don't know why you've got this confidence that we won't forget you. that was the poet's point. Right, the measuring Kaaba one. Okay, I'll watch that. I believe I have watched that, about where he's speaking about Petra in the valley. Hey Mufti, how do I encourage my wife to wear hijab? Hannah has a wife? This one interesting. This one interesting. Female to female, this one the clergy will be attacking, you know. So right, so people, let's wrap this up. Cool. Any issues, give me a shout. If you need to reach out to me, people, Facebook, Messenger is always better, by the way. I can respond much more easier. Right, so if you can, Facebook, Messenger, or Instagram. You can send me a message on Instagram, people. Mufti Abu Layth, that's it. That's what I'm talking about. Keep it real. Till next week, take very good care of yourselves. Remember me and your kind du'as as well. People, Jio, khush raho. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.